Think about watching the actor Prabhas in that massive epic movie Baahubali.
Oh, yeah. Such a massive film.
Right. And there's this one iconic, just completely over-the-top scene where he is shooting 3 arrows from his bow at the exact same time.
Oh, I know the exact scene you're talking about.
Yeah. Now, you are sitting in a theater. You are fully aware it's a movie. You know it is entirely CGI, but, like, your jaw still completely drops.
Because the spectacle of it just hijacks your brain.
Exactly. The spectacle. But here's the thing that really sent me down a rabbit hole today. Long before CGI, long before blockbuster cinema, there were people performing an even more impossible feat.
And they weren't doing it with digital arrows.
No, they were doing it with language. I mean, they were firing 3, 4, even 5 completely different epic storylines simultaneously from a single continuous sentence.
It is honestly mind-bending once you get into it.
It really is. So today's deep dive is into this staggering linguistic magic trick embedded in ancient Telugu poetry.
Yeah, and we've got some great material to work from for this.
We do. We are working from a really detailed analysis by Dr. Gautam Kashyap, supplemented by some sharp cultural commentary from Venkatramasarma Kumamuru, and backed by the academic research of scholar Yigal Bronner.
It's a great lineup of sources.
So our mission today is to guide you through what modern researchers are now calling literary technology. It's an ancient framework, so mathematically and creatively advanced, it makes our current methods of storytelling look, well, almost primitive.
Literary technology is, it's the perfect term for this.
Right.
Because we are not talking about flowery language or, poetic metaphors here. We are talking about the literal structural engineering of words.
Yeah, like coding.
Exactly like coding. It is a system of encoding information that modern academia is really only just now beginning to recognize as a pinnacle of human cognitive ability.
Wow.
But, to really grasp how monumental this achievement is, we have to start by looking at a pretty strange paradox regarding how this language is actually treated today.
Yeah, because the contrast between what this linguistic engine is capable of and how it is used by its modern speakers is, frankly, pretty jarring.
It's night and day.
Dr. Kashyap points out a very specific modern disconnect. He notes that you will frequently find native Telugu speakers today who carry this bizarre inferiority complex about their own language.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate.
They will proudly declare, English is a wonderful, educated language, while kind of muttering apologies that they just don't have the proper flow for Telugu.
And Venkatramasarma Kumamuru provides a brutal but totally necessary diagnosis of why that is happening.
Oh yeah, he doesn't hold back.
He really doesn't. He observes that it is not a flaw in the language itself. It is a systematic neglect by the speakers.
Right, like they've just stopped maintaining the machine.
Exactly. He points out that modern users have largely abandoned dictionaries. They ignore the foundational rules of grammar, meter, syntax.
All the structural stuff.
All of it. And because they've abandoned the mechanics, they have completely lost a unique built-in skill that the language provides, which is the ability to seamlessly forge brand new words out of existing adjectives and verbs.
So when they hit a roadblock in expressing a modern thought, instead of using the language's native tools to innovate, they just take the path of least resistance.
Yeah, they just plug in an English word.
It makes me think of someone who inherits a state-of-the-art multi-million-dollar quantum computer.
I love this analogy.
Right, a machine that could calculate the mysteries of the universe, but because they never bothered to read the manual or learn how to code, they just use it as a very heavy, expensive paperweight for their desk.
A very shiny paperweight.
Yeah. All while bragging to their friends about their basic plastic pocket calculator.
It really is the tragedy of the paperweight. It is a crisis of awareness, ultimately.
How so?
Well, when a speaker assumes English is structurally superior, they are operating under an illusion created by their own lack of technical fluency.
Wow, okay. That makes sense.
That illusion shatters the second you examine the historical literary code these ancient poets were writing in. I mean, they were utilizing a linguistic operating system that functions on a completely different dimension of complexity.
So let's actually look at the source code of that operating system.
Yeah.
Because I want to understand the mechanics of how these poets were, like, bending reality on the page.
You have to look at the mechanics, yeah.
Dr. Kashyap highlights 2 primary mechanisms. The first is Padavicchedanam, which is essentially word splitting.
Right.
And the second is Slesha, which deals with multiple meanings. So how do these actually function in practice?
Okay, so to understand this, we have to explain a fundamental characteristic of languages like Telugu and Sanskrit, which is agglutination, or sandhi.
Sandy.
Right. In English, we put words next to each other with spaces in between. Like the red car.
Yeah, discrete blocks.
Exactly. But in these ancient traditions, words don't just sit next to each other, they crash into each other and they fuse.
They fuse together.
Yeah. If a word ends in a vowel and the next word begins with a vowel, they merge. Consonants shift. Extra syllables act as glides.
So a sentence is less like a string of separate beads and more like one long continuous piece of metal that's been welded together.
Precisely. And that brings us to Padavicchedanam. Because the text is fused, the exact meaning of a sentence is determined entirely by where the reader mentally decides to cut the wald.
Wait, so where decide to pause?
Changes the entire sentence. Depending on where you slice the syllable, you create entirely different words.
That is wild.
And then you combine that with Slesha, which is the fact that certain syllables and root words have completely different dictionary definitions based on context.
Okay, so you have a recipe for simultaneous narration.
Exactly.
Think about this like a Rubik's Cube. Like, in English, if I use a pun, it's a quick joke. It's like peeling a sticker off the cube and moving it.
Right, a quick trick.
But what you're describing is a system where if the poet rotates one layer of the cube, the colors align on three completely different sides simultaneously.
That is the crucial distinction Yigal Bronner makes in his research.
Really?
Yeah. Western literature utilizes polysemy, words with two meanings, as a fleeting moment of wit.
Like a Shakespearean pun.
Exactly. A Shakespearean pun provides a quick laugh, and then the narrative just moves on.
Right.
These poets, however, use these fused words to sustain multiple, entirely distinct epic storylines at the exact same time for the duration of an entire book.
But hold on, let me push back on this from a reader's perspective.
Sure.
If I have to constantly pause, mentally slice syllables apart, and cross-reference a mental dictionary just to figure out who is talking, doesn't that completely destroy the pacing of the story? I mean, it sounds exhausting.
It sounds exhausting to a modern brain, definitely, especially one trained on quick linear media.
Yeah, my TikTok brain would short circuit.
Right. But remember, the audience for this literary technology was highly trained.
Oh.
Listening to or reading these epics was an active, participatory, cognitive exercise.
So the puzzle was the point.
Exactly. The joy wasn't just in hearing the plot. It was in the intellectual thrill of unraveling the linguistic puzzle in real time. The audience's working memory was deeply conditioned to hold these parallel tracks.
Okay, let's see what that parallel tracking actually looks like in action. Because Dr. Kashyap provides specific historical examples of these simultaneous epics, which are known as kavyas.
Yeah, the kavyas are phenomenal.
Let's look at how a poet actually initiates this. Take the Jyarthi Kavya, which tells two stories at once.
Level 2.
Level 2, right. Pingali Surana wrote the Raghava Pandavayamu, which simultaneously narrates the Ramayana and the Mahabharata.
The mechanics of how he pulls this off are just fascinating. Dr. Kashyap isolates one specific fused phrase from the text. The phrase is Nayanaka Dundupiki.
Okay, Nayanaka Dundupiki.
Right. Now, because of that phonetic fusion we talked about, the sandhi, that phrase is a combination of previous words bleeding into the next.
Right, so how do we split it to get story number one?
If the reader slices the fusion to isolate the sound and groups the rest as Anaka Dundupiki, it translates to that war drum.
That war drum, okay.
And within the structural context of the poem, it is describing King Dasharatha from the Ramayana, referencing the grand war drums of his royal court.
Okay, so A plus Anaka Dundupiki gives us King Dasharatha and the Ramayana. But what happens if the reader doesn't make that cut?
If you do not split the word and you read the core as one unified term, Anaka Dundubi, the meaning shifts completely.
To what?
In the deep vocabulary of the language, Anaka Dundubi is a specific proper name for Vasudeva.
The father of Lord Krishna.
Yes. Instantly, without changing a single letter on the page, the narrative abandons King Dasharatha's kingdom and drops you directly into the lineage of the Mahabharata.
It is brilliant. I mean, it's just seamless. But it also begs a huge structural question.
What's that?
How does a poet sustain this when the characters from these different epics don't perfectly align? Like, how do you write a scene that accurately describes a righteous king from one era, a blind king from another, and a completely different father figure using the exact same sentence?
That is where they have to escalate the complexity. And that brings us to the Triarthi Kavya, where poets wove 3 stories simultaneously.
Level 3.
Level 3. Naluru Raghavakavi mastered this. He navigated the character conflicts by zooming out to universally applicable attributes, which he encoded in highly flexible vocabulary.
Give me an example.
He uses the phrase ajanakuni, which at its root just means that father.
So it's a structural pivot point.
Exactly. Depending entirely on which of the three narrative frequencies the reader is tuned into, that father becomes King Dasharatha for the Ramayana, the blind King Dhritarashtra for the Mahabharata, or Vasudeva for the Bhagavatam.
That is wild.
He builds an architectural framework that supports three distinct realities.
And he does this with the female leads too, doesn't he?
He does, yeah.
He uses the word Rajavana, and the baseline translation is a woman with a face as luminous as the moon. But depending on the thread you are pulling, that one word conjures the image of Sita, Draupadi, or Rukmini.
Exactly.
I mean, three of the most massive, complex heroines in classical literature, just existing simultaneously in the exact same linguistic space.
Consider the cognitive load required to author this.
It hurts my head just thinking about it.
The poet is holding three massive narrative architectures in their working memory. They have to ensure that every single syllable serves the plot, the meter, and the grammar of all three stories perfectly.
Without a single compromise.
Not one.
I honestly thought 3 would be the absolute limit of human working memory, but they pushed it to 4.
They did.
The Katarati Kavya. 4 epic stories running at once. Tumu Ramadasu pulled this off, and this is where you really see the dictionary gymnastics come into play.
Oh, absolutely.
He weaves in words like Daruni. In one context, it directly identifies Sita, because she was famously born from the earth.
But shift the lens through Slesha, and the text provides the word Paurava, referencing Yudhishthira, the eldest Pandava born of the Puru dynasty.
Okay, that's 2.
And then layered underneath all of this historical narrative is Bhakta Santana, a direct reference to Lord Vishnu as the ultimate protector of devotees.
So wait, the poet is simultaneously telling the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, the Bhagavatam, and composing a dedicated spiritual hymn, all in one breath.
All in one breath.
You know, when we talk about this escalation, I have to go back to the tech analogy.
Let's hear it.
If you have ever looked at raw software code, you know how incredibly easy it is to break a program.
Oh, yeah. One mistake and it's over.
Right. One misplaced comma, one wrong bracket, and the whole system crashes. These poets were writing a single line of phonetic code that flawlessly runs 4 incredibly dense applications, and it never crashes.
And yet there is one more summit.
There's a level 5.
A level of complexity so severe that it forced modern global academics to completely reevaluate the intellectual history of South Asia.
The 5-story poem, the Pankarthi Kavya, achieved by the poet Palaparthi Nagaswara Sastri. 5 epic stories happening at the exact same time. How does the linguistic math even support this?
It requires an almost unbelievable mastery of dictionary roots.
I bet.
Dr. Kashyap breaks down a verse containing the word Ravivamsha.
Okay.
Read naturally in its most common form, it means the solar lineage. This immediately locks in the story of Rama, the hero of the Ramayana.
Right, Rama of the Surya dynasty. That's story 1.
But then the poet utilizes extreme Padavicchedanam. If you split the word into Ravi and Vamsha, you access a deeper, older layer of the dictionary.
Okay, so what does that give us?
Ravi means the sun. The remaining syllables, when fractured and recontextualized through Slesha, draw on obscure linguistic roots referring to the moon and to fire.
The sun, the moon, and fire.
Exactly. And what has the sun, the moon, and fire as its 3 eyes?
Lord Shiva.
Lord Shiva.
So by fracturing the word for lineage, he mathematically extracts the physical attributes of Shiva. Story number 2.
Exactly. And he continues this pattern with the word Rahita. In a standard epic context, it means shining or radiant, easily applied to any hero. But through a vowel shift and context change, Rajita becomes Rajata,
Which means?
the great silver mountain, Kailash, the eternal domain of Shiva.
Oh, wow.
Through this hyperdense selection of multifaceted words, Sastri's single poem flawlessly narrates the arcs of Rama, Shiva, Yudhishthira, Krishna, and Vishnu.
It's breathtaking,
Yeah.
truly. But you know what blows my mind?
What's that?
How the West reacted to this initially. For a long time, Western scholars looked at this absolute pinnacle of cognitive engineering, and they basically sneered at it.
They completely misunderstood it.
Yeah.
Early Western scholars, judging these texts by the standards of their own literary traditions, dismissed this as a corruption of straightforward storytelling.
Because they just didn't get the puzzle aspect.
Exactly. Because their only frame of reference was the comedic pun, they viewed this simultaneous narration as exhausting, pretentious, pretentious wordplay that just got in the way of a good plot. They couldn't see the architecture.
Which brings us back to Yigal Bronner's research. Dr. Kashyap heavily emphasizes Bronner's book Extreme Poetry, the South Asian movement of simultaneous narration.
A fantastic piece of scholarship.
It really is. Bronner essentially had to teach modern academia how to read this code, didn't he?
He did. Bronner's work completely dismantles those old Western prejudices.
Yeah.
He proves that this tradition is entirely alien to the Western concept of polysemy. He argues that this was a highly advanced technology of language, meticulously developed and refined over centuries.
So it wasn't a gimmick.
Not at all. It was a profound intellectual movement.
But this leads to the ultimate question.
Why do it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Why build a machine this complex? If you are a poet, why put yourself through the agony of engineering a 5-story linguistic labyrinth? Was this just an intellectual flex to intimidate rival poets?
That is actually the most profound revelation in the source material.
Really?
Yeah. This staggering mathematical and linguistic complexity was not born out of ego. It was an incredibly intentional, deeply philosophical statement.
Wait, how does grammar become a philosophy?
Look at the subjects of the poems. The poet is fusing the stories of revered, distinct deities, Rama, Shiva, Krishna, Vishnu, into the exact same physical text.
Right.
Historically, there have been intense sectarian divides. Followers of Shiva and followers of Vishnu often built walls around their specific interpretation of the divine, sometimes viewing each other as distinct or even opposed.
Right, people defending their own specific lens of truth.
Exactly. These poets used literary technology to actively tear those walls down.
Oh, I see where this is going.
By proving mathematically and linguistically that these different names, different histories, and different deities can perfectly coexist within the exact same structural space without contradiction.
They were delivering a universal human message.
Yes.
The medium literally is the message.
They were demonstrating that despite the different colored lenses you might look through, despite the different names you use to pray, there is ultimately only one supreme truth and one underlying path of Dharma. They didn't just preach unity and diversity as a nice-sounding theory. They proved it as a hard, undeniable, structural reality of the language itself.
To use the very mechanics of syntax and grammar to prove that humanity is fundamentally connected to the same source. I mean, it is brilliant.
It is the ultimate synthesis of supreme intellect and deep spiritual empathy.
We have covered incredible ground today.
We really have.
We started by examining the modern tragedy of speakers neglecting the profound mechanics of their own language, choosing the paperweight over the quantum computer.
Yeah.
We broke down the mechanics of Padavicchedanam and Slesha, the linguistic agglutination and word splitting that allowed ancient writers to shatter linear storytelling entirely.
And tools of the trade.
And we watched the complexity escalate from 2 stories to the mind-bending 5-story Pankarti Kavya.
Level 5.
An achievement so advanced that academics like Yigal Bronner had to coin the term literary technology just to categorize it. And finally, we discovered that the ultimate goal of all this complexity was to embed a message of universal unity into the very DNA of the text.
It forces us to remember that language is not just a passive tool for sharing information.
No.
It is the active framework through which we construct and organize reality itself.
And that brings me to a final thought I want you to mull over today. We are currently living in an era obsessed with building artificial intelligence.
Oh, absolutely.
We are spending billions of dollars training large language models to understand context, to parse multiple meanings, and to generate coherent narratives.
It's the new space race.
It is. But as we just saw centuries ago, ancient poets were running a biological neural network that could seamlessly process 5 simultaneous hypercontextual epic realities in a single, unbroken string of text.
Mind-blowing.
So as we hurtle toward an AI-driven future, we have to ask, could a machine ever truly replicate this organic, deeply philosophical, simultaneous narration?
That's a great question.
Or does this ancient literary technology represent a uniquely human cognitive peak? A profound synthesis of math, language, and spirit that artificial intelligence will simply never be able to touch. Something to think about.